I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to I Mix What I Like and our ongoing coverage of adventures in buying power. And a couple fresh ones have been delivered. Black and Latino buying power claims, overlapping with some claims around AI, which I just would want to highlight in terms of our ongoing and forthcoming continuing discussion with Professor Hillary Allen, among many others that we've been having, including some forthcoming with Dwayne Monroe as well, around the purpose of all this AI promotion and what it really does and does not mean. So there's a couple of overlaps here with what is ongoing and forthcoming in terms of my own work and what we've been looking at more broadly on this platform. All right, starting here with a news story from eMarketer. Streaming surpasses broadcast and cable for Black audiences, where according to Nielsen, Black adults in the United States spend 45.9% of their total TV time on streaming platforms, more than both cable and broadcast combined, according to a July 2024 data according to July 2024 data from Nielsen. Specific to my own particular interests, the claim right here, Black consumers, and why this would be important to marketers. And again, let me just highlight that once again. Again, and please do see the Redux video regarding my buying power argument if you're not familiar or want a refresher. The important point here, the claim of buying power has nothing to do with assessing the actual economic condition of any community. It is in these cases that I highlight almost exclusively only used to assess how much could potentially be extracted from the community by corporations looking to spend their advertising dollars wisely. So it is all about advertising, which again is a euphemism for branding, marketing, psychological warfare, strategic communication, propaganda, mass communication, entertainment, full spectrum dominance, information warfare, and so on. So when it says here that Black consumers' buying power is projected to reach 2.1 trillion in 2026, according to the Selig Center for Economic Growth,
Message.
we should be reminded that the Selig Center is, as they say in their own literature, only here to help Georgia businesses improve their economic condition. That is what the Selig Center is there to do. It is not there to assess the economic condition of any community, and it is only there to help specifically Georgia's business community. But their reports get widely circulated and extrapolated and misinterpreted and imposed for a variety of other reasons, some of which I talk about quite regularly, primarily to make sure that we do not consider more appropriate both economic analyses and then actions that would properly address what those analyses reveal. Once again, it's always the Selig Center that is the source, and most often, and as I've shown in my work, the Selig Center is wildly flawed. Its methods are wildly flawed in terms of how they reach these numbers and what we're supposed to take from them. All right, so I just wanted to show that this is about targeting, and this is also probably why we're seeing an increase in Black capitalist media being produced for podcasts and online streaming platforms. It's a well-supported, well-funded operation, supported again algorithmically through ad revenue, et cetera, and so forth. So it's highly desirable that those be the narratives, these Black capitalist buying power narratives. All right, but it's also, as I've said, becoming increasingly an issue in targeting Latin American communities. So I just noticed in this most recent drop of buying power, all from just this week in 2025, we get this one as well. Unlocking the Hispanic home ownership market, AI-driven financial inclusion and the future of U.S. real estate. So there's just a couple of things, and please do tune in next week when we speak with Professor Hillary Allen again about her work, FinTech Dystopia, please make sure you've also seen part one of that discussion. Again, what we're seeing here is the overlap of the mythology around what buying power is, and then this promotion of AI, which Dwayne Monroe has been talking a lot about lately, and we'll be hearing more from him on that this month, and from Professor Allen as well. And her book talks about this, that AI is, again, it's just being promoted. It's a largely useless or over promoted, overhyped bit of tech that has a lot of investment that the investors want to recoup. So they're finding ways to incentivize the people who have invested in it, are looking for ways to incentivize the people under their influence to use AI, to claim AI's brilliance and benefit, just so they can recoup their investment and then some. But it is this idea that it is going to unlock a market, or in a way that's going to be beneficial to the market itself or to the people themselves, is silly, or it's not well founded. The belief in it might not be silly in that it's so heavily promoted, but it is not a well founded or supported argument. As it says here, AI driven fintech solutions are reshaping the landscape of mortgage lending. And when we talk with Professor Allen, I will ask her more specifically about this. But when you read Fintech Dystopia, it's clear that that's not the case. That these fintech solutions, these techno solutionists, as Allen calls them, are pushing all of this, but it isn't changing anything. And in many ways, as she's showing in her book, it's making things worse, because these AI don't work the way or as well as many people think that they do. And the simple fact that we've been convinced that because they are some new tech and innovative, as she talks about, so many of the nightmares that are on the horizon or already in play are not going to be improved with the advent and inclusion of AI. AI-driven mortgage platforms, companies like Tidal Wave and Credit2, and we're going to come back to that in a second, are not just solving immediate problems. They're building scalable infrastructure for the $1.7 trillion Hispanic buying power market. And what is Credit2 and Tidal Wave? What are these investment in fintech investment platforms and devices? They're not here to help improve conditions. They're here to enrich investors and continue to promote this mythology that change can come through investment. But we're going to come back to Credit2 in just a second. But before we do that, I wanted to share this one too, another one that dropped this week, Debunking the Myths: Why the Hispanic Market is the Core of America's Economic Future. So first I want to highlight this here, pun intended, literally, and so on and so forth. America's economic future. That's what these ad-driven marketing products and mythologies are designed to support. Because what is America's economic future? What is the American economy? It is something that is owned by a handful of ruling elite, this 800 who are worth $6.2 trillion and so forth. So this is not about buying power helping the Hispanic community. It's pointing out that the Hispanic market, which is something that's created by a white supremacist settler colonial capitalist social relationship and economy, is going to benefit the American economy, not the so-called Hispanic community. And I think it's funny that Victor Miguel Coro starts off by saying, I'll admit it, I'm a data person. Numbers, stats, and facts have always been my way of cutting through the assumptions and seeing the bigger picture. And what is his point here? To say that, hey, Hispanics aren't some... really what this article is a summary written version of what John H. Johnson did in 1954 with selling the Negro. This article is just a lower form of production that's making the same argument, which is, hey, we're not the stereotype and the racist views that you have of us, and we're not a threat. We're not looking to become a problem. We want to help the country. And we prove our value by working hard, earning money, and spending that money on your products, helping the American economy. With more than 63 million people, Hispanics represent nearly 1 in 5 Americans. Their economic influence is immense, with a projected buying power surpassing $2.8 trillion in 2026. That's not a niche. That's a driving force in the future of the U.S. economy. And again, so that's again my point. The U.S. economy, which is already owned and accumulated and monopolized and oligopolized into a handful of entities that rule and make all the money and benefit from all of our participation in shopping and consumption, in working, et cetera, and so forth. But this is not something that is suggesting that this is these communities with these buying power numbers, which are again based on nothing. You see, nothing is even cited here. They don't even bother to tell you where they got that from. Is you know, all that it is again marketing, psychological warfare, counterinsurgency, designed to manipulate people into thinking that their service of an economy that is again owned by someone else is going to benefit them. So these myths that they want to debunk, not that of buying power, because they circulate that Latinos are all recent immigrants, so they show that that's not necessarily the case. 19% are second generation, 17% are third generation. The Hispanic community is one big uniform group. No, no, we're not. We're different. We're different. Don't box us in. This is the same silly black argument. We're not a monolith. We're not supposed to do it this way. We're not, you know, you can't just group us into one. But as Glenn Ford used to talk about a lot, actually, that's political immaturity. Of course, all communities have diversity within them, but it is politically immature to claim that you are not a unified bloc and to try to prove to marketers and to a political ruling elite that you are different and have diversity, because all that will be used for is for targeted disunifying messaging. Myth 3: Latinos are predominantly low income and financially struggling. And this was my favorite part, because hey, no, we're not financially struggling. Second generation Latinos are twice as likely as the first generation to have a household income of over $50,000. So 2 times as many first generation Latino households don't even earn $50,000. And yet the $50,000 household is being held up as upward mobility. This is a gross distortion, especially when I believe the average worker is making in this country somewhere between 30 and 45,000, something like that. They're saying that the entire household having an income of 50,000 is proof of upward mobility. This is proof of the inequality that persists, despite all the claims that some conservatives of all backgrounds want to make, following that white nationalist settler logic, that Latinos are coming over here and taking all the good jobs. Myth 4: Latinos don't influence mainstream culture or the economy. Again, having influence over the economy or the culture is a measurement of exploitation and nothing to be proud of. And it doesn't benefit a community that with all this influence still struggles to earn $50,000 as a household. But this is just what I wanted to come back to as a relatively quick example. As I mentioned a minute ago, Credit 2 is one of the supporters of this AI movement, as they're claiming, this artificial intelligence movement that's going to help Latinos in their home buying concerns, and it's going to help the Latino market. So Credit 2. So I just a quick look at it. What is Credit 2? This is from Crunchbase. Credit 2 is a fintech platform that provides people access to home financing. So as we'll continue to talk about, fintech is not a bank. It's not. It's as I've said about the Greenwood Bank Initiative, as they called it, which is just fintech as a gateway door for Black people to come in and be brought into white venture capital investment and banking, or to be exploited by that, I should say. Credito is the Latino version, or a Latino version of that same thing. Then I just was curious, who's behind it. So you look at who is funding them. If I'm reading this correctly, I'm happy to be checked on this. They have one lead investor with one funding round in November of 2021 from Avla, which is an insurance group that provides comprehensive financial solutions for SMEs. An SME is small to medium-sized enterprise, as I've just looked up. And then we look at who they are. Ignacio Almas is a founder with Mario Herrera Rifo. We see who's invested in Avla, Creation Investments Capital LLC. And then we have Patrick Fisher and Tyler Day. Which is and who are they? A private equity investments in microfinance institutions, small and medium enterprise lenders, emerging market banks, insurance providers, fintech, payment businesses, and other BOP financial service institutions focused on unbanked and underbanked in the developing world. So I don't mean to suggest that what I've just done here is exhaustive, but it's just a quick, I think, insight into what I continue to largely argue, both literally through finance and investment and narratively through the storytelling. All of this stuff is white nationalist, capitalist, settler colonial nonsense meant to manipulate and exploit already oppressed communities using the symbolism in a very liberal and counterinsurgent way, using their symbols and histories and desires and needs and interests against them. It is very much the again, why I keep using making these arguments around the overlap in the euphemisms involved. Marketing, advertising, counterinsurgency, psychological warfare, information warfare, et cetera, and so forth. They're all essentially doing the same thing. They are, as Harold Laswell said 100 years ago, not changing the conditions, but changing people's attitudes towards those unchanging conditions. All right, everybody, a relatively short one. Please do all the things, support the platform. And again, peace only if you're willing to fight for it, as Fred Hampton used to say. And I'll catch you next time around here at...
And what do you sacrifice?
Calm, kindness, kinship, love. I've given up all chance at inner peace. I made my mind a sunless space. I share my dreams with ghosts. I wake up every day to an equation I wrote 15 years ago for which there's only one conclusion. I'm damned for what I do. My anger, my ego, my unwillingness to yield, my eagerness to fight, that set me on a path from which there's no escape. I yearn to be a savior against injustice without contemplating the cost, and by the time I look down, there's no longer any ground beneath my feet. What is my sacrifice? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see. Now, the ego that started this fight will never have a mirror or an audience or the light of gratitude. So what do I sacrifice? Everything.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.